Thank you very much. I'd like to talk about what I've learned in my years as a consumer reporter and then open it up for your comments or questions. When I graduated college, I thought I understood the world. My professors had explained it to me and it made sense. And they said that we now know what works and we know how to fix the world. And we, wise elites, can use government to lift the poor up, make the world better. And the basic premise behind that was the system without government was okay. It's capitalism. Brings us some stuff. It's useful. But it's by and large cruel and unfair. And you need government to make it temperate, to protect the weak. You need the Federal Trade Commission to police the advertising. You need the whole alphabet soup of agencies that keep growing in Albany and Washington to protect us. And intuitively, this just made total sense to me. And I took my first job out of college and became a researcher in a newsroom. And 3 years later, I was the consumer reporter. Consumer reporting was just beginning. And night after night, I found capitalists to bash. And there are a lot of them who are misleading people. The Coffee Institute was running ads that said, coffee's the drink that picks you up while it calms you down. So I called them up and said, how can you say this? It's contradictory. Well, we have research to back this up. Really? What's the research? Well, we surveyed thousands of people. We asked them, what do you get out of your coffee break? Some people said it picked them up. Some people said it calmed them down. Libby Owens Ford Glass Company ran ads saying, look how clear our car window glass is. And they shot them with the windows rolled down. So this is why we consumer reporters said, look, they cheat. You got to police this. You got to have lawyers who sue them and the government to police it. And I cheered on the bureaucrats, and I'm a little embarrassed at how long it took me to see the truth, which is that for every person they help, they hurt 1,000. That all these rules have unintended consequences and they make life worse for consumers. The regulation doesn't work. First, it consumes vast amounts of money. The least of it is the money taken directly from us that goes to pay the regulators. That's a significant cost. But the bigger cost is the indirect cost. All the money and creative energy that's lost in trying to game the rules instead of trying to make a more creative product, a better product. You now have the highest scoring people at your school, I imagine, or many of them are going not to engineering school or medical school or into physics, they're going to law school. I don't blame them, that's where the action is now. But that doesn't make America more prosperous. I don't blame them because there are so many rules everywhere now to build Dugan Hall. I guarantee you it took longer to get permission to build it than it did to actually build the building. I mean, it's taken 25 years just trying to work through the system to replace the Peace Bridge, and they still haven't gotten to that. Everywhere in America, it takes longer to get permission to build the house than to build a house. This makes America poor. All the rules, though, are well-intended. They want to make sure nobody gets hurt along the way. But then I saw that those rules, took me many years to see this too, that they didn't even work to stop the obvious crooks. The people selling the breast enlargers, or the burn fat while you sleep pills, or the natural cancer cure. They kept getting away with it, despite all the regulations that I had cheered on. Maybe sometimes 5 years into the scam, the sleepy regulators would wake up and they would go and file a lawsuit against the crook. And then the crook would hire a defense lawyer and we would use our slow legal system to hold the regulators off for another 5 years. And then they would just move across the border to a different state or county. Or they'd change the name of the product. Or they'd sign a consent order. Consent order is where we say, we'll pay your legal fees, but we don't admit doing anything wrong. But we won't do it anymore. Who won from those fights? The lawyers win, but the public didn't win. And yet, what would protect the public beside that? Finally, it dawned on me, 15 years into doing this consumer reporting, competition protects the public. It does it better than government regulation does. It works even in places where intuitively you wouldn't think it would. As an example, and I don't mean to say it works perfectly. There will always be Enrons and WorldComs, but in a $14 trillion economy, you're going to have some of those scams. And what's remarkable is how rare they are. What a tiny piece, big as they were, what a tiny piece of the economy they are. But because they're rare, that's why they're on the front pages. And I noticed when I was a reporter in Portland, Oregon, in my first job, I could find a lot of these scams to cover. But when I got to the network, to Good Morning America in 2020, I couldn't find that many big national scams. They don't grow that big in an open society because word gets out. When you have competition, the bad companies can't keep getting away with it. The way to get really rich in America is to give customers good stuff that we want. The good companies thrive. The bad ones atrophy. And this competition protects us in areas you wouldn't think it would. As an example, let's look at the greedy, profit-driven companies that have employed me. I've worked now for ABC, CBS, NBC, the three biggest networks. They get all their money, every penny, from advertisers. So intuitively you'd think they'd let the advertisers run the show and push all kinds of sleazy products. And yet they don't. Each network has a board of censors that looks at every ad that comes in, demands 2 good studies before you can make a medical claim. They demand wording changes in half the ads. They drive the ad agencies crazy. And sometimes they turn the money down outright. Now why would they turn the money down? Because markets work in unexpected ways. In this case, they figured out, yeah, we'll lose some money to people we tick off, but we can make more money if our ad time is not thought of as an environment for sleaze. So we make more money by policing ourselves. Or how about the fact that I was allowed to be a consumer reporter year after year, bashing brand name products, biting the hand that fed my employer. Ralph Nader, when consumer reporting was just beginning, said that would never happen on commercial TV stations. You'll only see it on PBS, public broadcasting, because the commercial stations won't want to tick off their sponsors. What's the truth today? 30 years later, the opposite is true, as is the case with so much of what Ralph says. There is no consumer reporting on public television because the timid bureaucrats are too nervous about offending anybody. But there are consumer reporters on most commercial TV stations, insulting sponsors. I mean, I was on CBS. I got sued by Bristol Myers for $25 million when I was 25 years old. This was a real shock to me. I had said they were lying in their ads, and they were. They were saying bufferin kills twice as much pain, or Excedrin is a stronger pain reliever, or works twice as fast, when it's aspirin. It's all aspirin. It's all the same. They didn't like the way I put it, and they sued, and I thought CBS would fire me, but they didn't. They said, keep doing this. They didn't say, Stossel ain't worth that. Why? Again, because a free market protects consumers in unanticipated ways. In this case, the stations figured out that, yes, we'll lose some money in lawsuits and in ticked-off advertisers who pull out their accounts, but more of you will watch a news program that tells the truth about sponsors, too. And with more viewers, we make more money. Competition protects us better than government. Now, when I say this, people often say, all right, it'll protect us for trivial stuff like that, but when it comes to the serious issues, whether we're safe, whether we live or die, then you got to have rules. You got to have OSHA to protect the workers, or the Consumer Product Safety Commission, or the DEA, the FDA, the whole alphabet soup of agencies that keep growing. And intuitively, I say, yeah, that makes sense. It's a complicated world. I can't understand everything. Let's have these specialists set the rules. But again, now I have to say, oh, that I just watch them work? They don't make us safer. Because by interfering with the market, which is nothing more than the wishes of millions of free people, by interfering with that, they always create unintended side effects and they're worse.